Hey yo, pop it, how are you? Welcome back to Premiership Stars Relive the League. I'm Mike. Well, usually Ben would be here, but he's decided to have himself the week off, so I'm doing it all on my own, reliving the Premier League game week by game week, with all the goals and all the drama, all the comedy moments right back at the start in 1992. In Ben's absence, we've got ourselves a guest statistician for the week. Rob from the Twitter account, The Premiership Years. Thank you so much for all the useful facts you gave us. You put Ben out of a job. Essentially, if you aren't following him already on Twitter, go across and do that. While you're there, follow us as well if you don't already. And while you're here on YouTube, like, subscribe, press the bell thing, comment, do whatever you like and do all the things above and below. This week, we give you probably one of the best goals you'll ever see from TalkSport legend Jason Cundy, who, well, did he mean it? Didn't he? He'll probably tell you he did, and he's probably showed everybody all over all these years. But we're going to bring that to you today. The player of the week is Aston Villa's Gary Parker, influencing the game all on his own. Arguably, the goal of the week could have gone to Leeds United's Gary McAllister. If it wasn't for Jason Cundy, he probably would have won it hands down. And the comedy moments with back passes this week are brought to you by mainly Jan Steshgal in goal at QPR, who, well, he did one or two things. One of them was a beautiful moment when he thought it was Lothar Matthäus and could play out from the back, and an honourable mention for David Batty, who got a little bit confuddled. So, let's do what we're all here to do. Let's press that rewind button. Let's go back to 1992. And let's relive the league. We start this week with Arsenal at home to Sheffield Wednesday, who haven't won at Highbury in 30 years. Arsenal line up with David Seaman in goal, Tony Adams, Steve Bold, Nigel Winterburn and Lee Dixon at the back, with David Hillier, John Jensen, Paul Merson and Ray Parlour in the middle, with the Super 2 Kevin Campbell and Ian Wright up front. And on the benches Alan Miller, Colin Pates and Alan Smith. And Sheffield Wednesday line up with Chris Woods in goal, Nigel Pearson, Peter Shirtliff, Paul Warhurst, Nigel Worthington and Roland Nielsen at the back, with Danny Wilson, Graham Hyde, Chris Bart-Williams in midfield, and Paul Williams and David Hurst up front. And on the bench are Kevin Pressman, John Harkes and Nigel Jemson. After 8 minutes, Ian Wright chased the ball down the left, scuffed a crossing, Paul Merson played the best dummy of all time, and there was Ray Parlour to smash home past Chris Woods to make it 1-0 to the Arsenal. Then after 27 minutes, Wright found himself free on the left again, laid it inside, and Merson wellied home from the edge of the box for his first Premier League goal, making it 2-0 to Arsenal. Then, someone ran into David Hirst with a transit van. Oh, no, that was Steve Bold. Right into David Hirst's ankles. Now, there was no red card. David Hirst he's in agony, isn't he? He don't know what's going on. But there's an old saying in Yorkshire. The Yorkshire born and Yorkshire bred. Strong in arm and tough in head. And what do you do when you've only got one ankle? A bitey from the edge of the box to make it 2-1. Injuring your other leg and your knee. But David Hirst, you'll go down in history. 2-1 Arsenal. All the action was in the first half at Highbury today, but Arsenal did control the second half well to make sure they got all 3 points, ensuring they took maximum points from 3 games in 7 days. Next up, we have Queen's Park Rangers travelling to Stamford Bridge to take on Ian Porterfield's Chelsea. Before the game, Jerry Francis wanted to see how the QPR squad could deal with the pressure of being the league leaders, but this was QPR's 5th game in 12 days. Porterfield's gone with Dave Bessett in goal, Paul Elliott, Mal Donaghy and Steve Clark at the back. With Gareth Hall, Vinnie Jones, could be his last game for Chelsea with rising speculation he's leaving to join Wimbledon, Andy Townsend, Dennis Wise and Graham Stewart in midfield, with Robert Fleck and Mick Harford up front. And on the bench, Nick Colgan replaces Kevin Hitchcock, who probably has a few too many splinters in his bum after sitting on the bench all season, David Lee and Eddie Newton. And for QPR, Jan Steshkal in goal, Alan McDonald, Darren Peacock, Clive Wilson and David Bardsley at the back, with Simon Barker, Andy Impey, Ray Wilkins and Andy Sinton in midfield, with a front two of Dennis Bailey and Les Ferdinand. And on the bench, Tony Roberts, Danny Maddox and Gary Penrice. Queen's Park Rangers today led out of course by Chelsea hero from the 70s, Ray Wilkins. Of course receiving a warm welcome, but no well wishes. Chelsea are coming after those 3 points today. Let's just say, QPR goalkeeper Jan Steshkal did not cover himself in too much glory today. In the 59th minute, a cross came into the back post. Mick Harford did really well under pressure from Darren Peacock. Found Andy Townsend who whipped in a cross. There was a short clearance, went straight to Mick Harford, and he rolled one through Steshkal, who just seemed to let it in. 1-0. And then after a beautiful punt forward, Steshkal decided to try and invent the sweeper keeper role. Not realising he couldn't quite use his feet, and he had Dennis Wise chopping at his ankles like a Yorkshire Terrier. Wise, as always, was relentless and never gave up until Chelsea got the ball. Graham Stewart involved, Wise back involved. Surely a goal to make it 2-0. All Steshkal's fault, but his blushes were saved after a wasted cross couldn't find Mick Harford at the back post. But then, Steshkal redeemed himself and invented a new form of play after he hoofed a ball up the pitch and accidentally hit his right back on the head, which bounced up and caused everyone to get confused and sent Les Ferdinand herring in on goal. And there's only one thing that happens when Ferdinand... Kept Darren Peacock having a hissy fit there. Leslie. Steshkal's naff up, meaning Mick Harford's goal, giving Chelsea their first win of the season. Next up, we have a battle of 2nd versus 4th at Highfield Road as Coventry entertain Blackburn Rovers. Blackburn looking to keep their 4th clean sheet in a row. We all know Blackburn haven't been shy in spending a bob or two to propel themselves up the league. They've been looking at someone to fill that midfield, and Jeff Thomas couldn't quite get hold of him, so they've turned their attention to Steve Hodge at Leeds and are looking to pay up to £750,000 for him. They've also got an eye on Coventry City's Kevin Gallagher, with Dalglish admitting he's a big fan of the Scot, and also looking to pay £250,000 for Bournemouth goalie Vince Barcham, but they're trying to hold out for £500k. Let's see, eh? In pursuit of that top spot in the league, Bobby Gould selected Steve Grizovic in goal, a back three of Andy Pearce, Kenny Sansom and Brian Burrows, who's coming in for the injured Peter Atherton, a midfield of Terry Fleming, Sean Flynn, who comes in for Mickey Ginn, Lee Hurst, Lloyd McGrath, who's in for Stuart Robson, and David Smith. Up front, we have Robert Rosario, and replacing John Williams for his first start of the season is Kevin Gallagher. On the bench we have Jonathan Gould, Phil Babb and John Williams. And in their own pursuit for that top spot, Moneybags Blackburn have selected Bobby Mims in goal, Colin Hendry, Kevin Moran, David May and Alan Wright, who comes in for Jason Wilcox. In midfield, Mark Atkins, Tim Sherwood, Tony Dobson and Stuart Ripley, with a front two of Mike Newell and Super Alan Shearer up front. On the bench we have Matt Dickens, Gordon Cowans and the American Roy Wegley. In a game where you'd expect bags of goals really from two teams who started off the season like an house on fire, we had to wait until the 69th minute and Alan Shearer got clear down the wing. He skinned Lloyd McGrath through his legs and head in on the box. Lloyd McGrath followed him and as soon as he crossed that white line he chipped it. Penalty to Blackburn. An opportunity for Shearer to bag his fourth goal of the season from the spot. Was there ever any doubt? 1-0 to Blackburn Rovers. And then, in the 79th minute, Stuart Ripley crossed the ball in and the cross was met by Mark Atkins and... well, Steve Grizovic, he tried his hardest and he failed. Blackburn win 2-0 and go above Coventry in the league. That's Blackburn's fourth clean sheet in a row. Themselves and Arsenal turning into a real force now and pushing up the right end of the table. Additionally, in attendance today was England boss Graham Taylor. Not quite sure who he was scouting though, Alan Shearer to bang the goals in, or Coventry coach Phil Neal, who was appointed the assistant manager at England after this game, replacing Alan Ball, who couldn't commit to all the games in the season. Next up, we have Norwich City travelling to Selhurst Park to face Steve Coppell and his army of defenders. Go on then, Steve, let's do this again. Nigel Martin in goal, John Humphrey in defence, Andy Thorne in defence, Eric Young in defence, Chris Coleman in defence, Lee Sinoff in defence, Gareth Southgate in defence, Dean Gordon in defence, Jeff Thomas in midfield, Eddie McGoldrick just absolutely everywhere, and up front Mark Bright. On the bench we have Paul Held, Simon Osborne and John Solarco, which should be good news for the Palace fans. Additional good news as well. Fair play to Steve, he's addressed his overuse of defender. He's gone out and bought young hotshot Chris Armstrong from Millwall. He can't play until next week though. And for Norwich, Brian Gunn in goal, Rob Newman, Ian Butterworth, Mark Bowen and Ian Culverhouse at the back, with the midfield of Jeremy Goss, Gary Megson, Ian Crook and David Phillips, with Lee Power coming in for the injured dead-eye goal-getter Mark Robbins and Chris Sutton. On the bench are Mark Walton, Colin Woodthorpe and Darryl Such. In the 9th minute, young striker Lee Power, deputising for the injured Mark Robbins, instigated some great tiki-taka play involving Jeremy Goss, Chris Sutton, Power again, Ian Crook, and then found David Phillips in the box, who scuffed his shot and it hit the head of Power, the Ireland under 21 international, to make it 1-0 to Norwich. And then, in the 20th minute, a long throw came in. There was some bobbling about in the box. And who's there? Who's always there for his third goal of the season? Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mr. Football, Eddie McGoldrick. Then, 74 minutes in, Norwich City's standout player of the season. Ladies and gentlemen, Welsh international, David Phillips with an acrobatic volley to take the points back to Carrow Road and return to winning ways for Mike Walker's Norwich. A great result for Norwich on the road, which is draw specialist Crystal Palace's first defeat of the season. At Goodison Park, Everton, who are still without the injured Martin Keown, Tony Cottee, Matt Jackson and Ian Snowden, host Joe Kinnear's Wimbledon, who are still without John Fashnu. The last time these two teams played was a 0-0 draw, hoping for a bit more excitement in this one. Everton line up with Neville Southall in goal, Alan Harper, Gary Ablett, Dave Watson, Mark Ward and Andy Hinchcliffe at the back, with John Ebrell, Barry Horn and the returning traveller Robert Varzik at the Tashman coming in for Mo Johnson, with Peter Beardsley behind Paul Rideout up front. On the bench are Jason Caton, Peter Beagrie and Mo Johnson. And for Wimbledon, Hans Sagers in goal, Scott Fitzgerald, Dean Blackwell, Warren Barton and Brian McAllister at the back, with Gerald Dobbs, Paul Miller, Laurie Sanchez and Robbie Earle in the middle, and Steve Anthropos and Dean Holdsworth up front. On the bench are Neil Sullivan, Roger Joseph and Andy Clark. An interesting one for the statisticians I'll go with, and for giving a clear indication of the financial situation at Wimbledon. 7 of today's squad were in last season's youth team. Sometimes it's as if we set things up to put players in the spotlight to highlight certain things, but true greats always find the spotlight by themselves. And today, the returning Polishman, Robert Verzica, could have won the game for Everton after a delicious Peter Beardsley through ball left him clean through on goal, one-on-one with Hans Sagers, 10 yards out, and he cracked it against the crossbar, making a second 0-0 in a row between Everton and Wimbledon. It's the first time Everton haven't scored this season, and it's also the first time that Wimbledon have kept a clean sheet, so decide on that what you will. 0-0. And now to Ellen Road in Leeds, where we have a battle between two of English football's biggest giants in Leeds United and Liverpool. And of course, just 3 weeks earlier, they both shared an epic encounter at Wembley in the Charity Shield, in which Leeds came out top in a brilliant 4-3 win, with Eric Cantona bagging a hat-trick. He bagged a hat-trick last week. Is he the man that's going to keep Leeds at the top of the table for years to come? Let's find out. Ellen Road is an absolute fortress, and Leeds are unbeaten in 25 games at home. The last team to beat them? Liverpool. Today, Howard Wilkinson selected John Lukic in goal, a back four of Chris Fairclough, Chris White, Tony DeRigo and John Newsom. David Batty, Gary McAllister, Gary Speed and Rod Wallace make up the midfield, with Eric Cantona and Lee Chapman up front. On the subs bench, Mervyn Day, Blackburn target Steve Hodge and super sub Gordon Strachan. And for Liverpool, David James in goal, Mark Wright, David Burrows, Steve Harkness and Rob Jones at the back, with Paul Stewart, Jan Molby, Jamie Redknapp coming in, and Ronnie Whelan in midfield, with Ian Rush and Dean Saunders up front, still heavily linked with an Aston Villa move. On the bench we have Mike Hooper, Mike Marsh and Mark Walters. It only took Leeds 7 minutes to get off the mat today, and what a way to do it. After a long throw came in and some great composure and control by Lee Chapman, a level of ridiculousness that only Gary McAllister could show to give Leeds the lead. 1-0 at Ellen Road. Liverpool lit back just before half-time. In the 44th minute, a long ball was played out to the left wing. Some great control showed by Paul Stewart and a deft little touch back to Ronnie Whelan. You don't give this man 2 touches in the box. He picked his spot and beat John Lukic to make it 1-1. The Republic of Ireland international, who's been at Liverpool since 1979, justifying why a lot of people held him in high regard as one of the best midfield players in world football. And at the age of 31, showing he's still got it, keeping Steve McManaman and Don Hutchinson out the side. And at the other end, we have the reverse, with youngster David James on great form, showing why he's picked ahead of Bruce Grobbelaar, stopping David Batty from scoring a wonder goal. Then, in the 70th minute, Batty himself came up against the dreaded back pass rule. Didn't know what to do in the box, didn't know where to play it, caused a lot of trouble there. The ball was laid out to Mark Walters and John Newsom carved him down. Walters sat up and had a look at the referee, then went down and held his knee. Penalty awarded to Liverpool. Who else? Jan Molby, 2-2, both from the spot. Liverpool take the lead. 2 icons in red, giving Liverpool a potentially solid win away at Ellen Road. What composure shown by Molby. Lukic got a hand to it, but the pace beat him. Then Leeds piled on the pressure. Late on in the game, Tony DeRigo was out on the left wing, pinged in a wonderful cross to Steve Hodge with an unbelievable diving header and an even better save by youngster David James. How are Leeds going to get through that man today? And then, from the resulting corner, ironically in the dying minutes, just like against Ipswich in midweek, a late corner come in and then David James forgot he had arms. It went straight to Lee Chapman, who nodded in the equaliser from 2 yards out, sharing a point to Ellen Road. Another great game, 2 games, 3 weeks, 11 goals. Leeds now an unbelievable 26 unbeaten at home. Liverpool, unfortunately, they've used 21 players so far this season. It's the worst start in 30 years, and even David Batty can't even cope with this new back pass rule. What's going on? It's killing the game. And now to Main Road, where we have the defensive wall of Manchester City against Oldham Athletic, who just love goals in the game, regardless of what end they're going. This should be nothing but pure entertainment at its finest. Peter Reid selected Tony Coton, Keith Curle, Michel Vonk, Ian Brightwell, and the final piece in the puzzle, Terry Phelan. In midfield, Steve McMahon, Fitzroy Simpson, Rick Holden and David White, and up front, Niall Quinn and Mike Shearer. Substitutes for City today are Martin Margetson, Peter Reid himself and Gary Flitcroft. And for Oldham Athletic, John Allworth in goal, Steve Redmond, Richard Jobson, Neil Poynton and the Norwegian Gunnar Haller at the back, Neil Adams, Paul Bernard, Mike Milligan and Ian Marshall in midfield, with Ian Olney and Graham Sharp up front. On the bench we have Ian Gray, Craig Fleming and Roger Palmer. As everyone expected, this game got out the blocks quicker than Limpid Christie did in Barcelona, and for once, Niall Quinn got himself a goal instead of setting one up on a plate, which Michel Vonk kindly did for him on this occasion. 1-0 to City. And then, 4 minutes later, Keith Curle pumped a free kick up the pitch, David White's volley hit the bar from 5 yards out, and then Michel Vonk, he shot on goal, it hit about 14 Oldham defenders and a post on its way in, but look how happy he is, 2-0 City. Then, after 11 minutes, a corner was whipped in as Steve Redmond flicked it on, and it was Richard Jobson nodding home to make it 2-1. Tony Coton, they weren't too happy there. Then after 23 minutes, Ian Brightwell stole possession in his own half after some bad control, oofed one up the pitch and David White latched onto it, ran in and headed in on goal as per usual, put it away, 3-1 to Man City. Then Oldham, yet again, provided some sensational Route 1 football with a long ball up the park, eventually finding Paul Bernard on the left wing, who crossed one back and Mike Milligan with a sensational finish to make it 3-2. After 38 minutes, again, I can't keep up with this, a corner come in and somehow a ball hit Gunnar Haller and it's gone in at the near post. It's 3-3 and it's 3-3 at half time. So, it's 3-3 at half time. Peter Reid's brought himself on because Steve McMahon's legs were getting a bit wary and Mike Milligan was giving him the run around. Fitzroy Simpson thought he'd score, but then Steve Redmond headed it over for the corner. Then another corner come in, a great clearance, and well, City are going to have another chance here, aren't they? Some great play by Ian Brightwell down the right, beats two people, whacks a ball into the cross, and there's no one there. It was that. That was Shearer, I think, and then Quinn's been axed in the box. There's definitely a penalty there. Go on, Reedy. That's just showing how to win the ball back in proper fashion from Peter Reid. So shows for the ball again, and look at the skill of this man here. He won't just tackles. Plays in, David White. Oh, what a save by Allworth. I honestly can't keep up with this. I don't know what's going on, so I'll let this replay just play. No son born of their own mother will be able to convince me that Niall Quinn shouldn't have won a penalty there. Unbelievably, this game has ended 3-3. All 6 goals in the first half. It's already the second time that Oldham have conceded 3 goals in a game this season, and they haven't lost either. They've conceded 20 goals in 5 games. A wonderful game, a great advert for the Premier League's tagline of a whole new ball game. Right then, now we're all over that one. We go to Nottingham, to the City Ground, where Nottingham Forest host Alex Ferguson's Manchester United. In the past couple of days, Nottingham Forest have sold star striker Teddy Sheringham to Tottenham Hotspur for £2 million. Going into this season, they had 2 key players in Des Walker and Teddy Sheringham. Now, both no longer there. Let's see how they can cope. Man United keeper Peter Schmeichel's been clocking up them air miles after keeping a clean sheet in midweek. He kept a clean sheet for Denmark in the World Cup qualifier against Latvia and has hot-footed it back for today. Nottingham Forest line up with Mark Crossley in goal, Steve Chettle, Terry Wilson, Stuart Pearce and Brian Laws at the back, with Gary Crosby, Roy Keane and Scott Gemmell in central midfield, Nigel Clough and Ian Warren behind Gary Bannister up front on his own, replacing Teddy Sheringham. On the bench we have Andy Marriott, I might need some help with this one, but Torvaldur Orligsson and Kingsley Black. And Manchester United line up with the Great Dane Peter Schmeichel in goal, Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister and Dennis Irwin at the back, a midfield of Paul Ince, Mike Phelan, Darren Ferguson, Ryan Giggs, Brian McClare, another start for Dion Dublin and Mark Hughes up front. And on the bench we have Gary Walsh, Clayton Blackmore and Andrei Kanchelskis. He may well be footballing royalty, but Brian Clough isn't half struggling with this new era of the Premier League losing key players. And after 17 minutes today, Scott Gemmell was caught in possession by Paul Ince, who found himself clean through on goal with a great save by Mark Crossley, rebounded the ball out to Mark Hughes, 25 yards out, smashed home with his second goal of the season to make it 1-0 to Manchester United. United's hotshot winger, Ryan Giggs, capitalised on another defensive mistake and another mishap involving the back pass rule and what the hell you do now, but his shot and goal was blocked on the line by Stuart Pearce. And in the 50th minute, Paul Ince found Clayton Blackmore clear down the right, who whipped in a cross and found Ryan Giggs at the back post, who nodded home his first Premier League goal. In regard to Giggs, there hasn't been as much hype around a footballer for many years, and United are just hoping he can live up to the expectations. Tenacious midfielder, nicknamed the Governor, Paul Ince, was drawing comparisons with Manchester United legend Brian Robson, and showing some great form this season, and 2 involvements today in the goals. He's proving to be a hell of a signing, and one that could take Manchester United on into the future. The points go back to Old Trafford today, who've kept the second clean sheet in a week, or the third in a week for Peter Schmeichel, having kept a clean sheet for Denmark against Latvia. It's now Forest's third defeat in a row, and without Sheringham and without Des Walker, times are looking bleak. Now to Bramall Lane in Sheffield, where Aston Villa are the visitors against Sheffield United, who are looking to register the first win since the first game of the season. Villa, on the other hand, haven't won at Bramall Lane in 31 years, but with hotshot striker Dalian Atkinson in scintillating form, you've got to think they'll fancy their chances. Harry Bessett has chose a starting lineup of Simon Tracy in goal, Brian Gale, Paul Beasley and Tom Cowan at the back, with Kevin Gage, John Gannon coming in for Ian Bryson, Mike Lake and Mitch Ward in for Charlie Hatfield, with Alan Cork, Glyn Hodges and Big Brian Dean up front. On the subs bench are Alan Kelly, Carl Bradshaw and Adrian Littlejohn. And for Aston Villa, Nigel Spink in goal, Sean Teal, Paul McGrath, Steve Staunton and Earl Barrett at the back, with a midfield of Gary Parker, Kevin Richardson, Ray Houghton and Steve Froggatt, with Dalian Atkinson and Cyril Regis coming in for the injured Tony Daly up front. On the bench, Les Seeley, Ugo Ehiogu and the veteran Frank McAvenny. Sometimes a football bounces just right, and after a Steve Staunton throw-in, one did just that for Gary Parker to whack home from 30 yards, leaving Simon Tracy stood standing. 1-0 to Aston Villa. And with 5 minutes to go after some great play by Ray Houghton and Steve Staunton down the left, the ball found itself in the box with Dalian Atkinson, who controlled it and laid it back for Gary Parker to whack one home to make it 2-0 and the 3 points going back to Villa Park. Gary Parker equalling his goal tally from the entire season last year. Sheffield United drawing a blank for the first time this season, and Dalian Atkinson drawing a blank for the first time this season, but getting himself an assist. Now to the Dell, where Southampton take on Middlesbrough. Ian Brandfoot selected Tim Flowers in goal, Kevin Moore, Ken Moncal for his second game in a week after getting man of the match on his debut against Man United in midweek, Mickey Adams and Jason Dodd at the back, a midfield of Terry Hurlock, Neil Madison, Matt Letitia back in the side, a debut for Perry Groves, and the 2 strikers David Speedy and Kerry Dixon up front, who've made more than 1,000 club appearances between them. On the subs bench, Ian Andrews, Jeff Kenner and Nicky Banger. Or Banger, but it is Banger, but Banger sounds good, doesn't it? And for Middlesbrough, Ian Ironside, Alan Kernahan, Derek White, Jimmy Phillips and Chris Morris at the back, with Andy Peake, Robbie Mustoe, Tommy Wright in midfield and Bernie Slaven, Paul Wilkinson and Willie Faulkner up top. A subs bench of Brian Horn, Jonathan Gittins and Gary Parkinson. It seemed like the narrow defeat to Man United made Southampton decide to want to play football instead of just barneying around with everybody. And after some neat build-up play, the ball found itself at the feet of Robbie Mustoe, who made an energetic burst into the box and crossed the ball along the floor to beat Paul Wilkinson, who got his 4th goal in 4 games. Southampton got themselves a penalty in the 80th minute. We don't even need to commentate. Letizia took it. Obviously he scored. It's 1-1. Then Letizier's magic turned to corners and he whipped one in. And Nicky Banger, he scored in the 83rd minute and sent the Dell into raptures. 3 points for Southampton. A funny old week for Middlesbrough, thrashing the champions in midweek, then getting beat by Southampton away on Saturday, gifting Southampton their first win of the season. And finally, on Sky's Super Sunday, on Sunday the 30th of August 1992, John Lyle's Ipswich Town host Doug Livermore's Tottenham Hotspur at Portman Road. Sometimes the phrase Super Sunday doesn't always live up to its billing, but today Super Sunday caught a great moment of magic from Tottenham defender Jason Cundy. John Lyle names an unchanged side yet again, with Craig Forrest in goal, a back three of Phil Whelan, David Linnigan and John Wark, a midfield of Geraint Williams, Jason Dazelle, Gavin Johnson, Mick Stockwell and Neil Thompson, with Paul Goddard and Chris Kiwami up front. On the subs bench is Clive Baker, Eddie Youds and Simon Milton. And for Tottenham, Doug Livermore makes 2 changes today after admitting that Leeds taught him a lesson when battering them 5-0 in midweek. Ian Walker comes in for Eric Torsved, who had a nightmare game. Neil Ruddock, Jason Cundy, Justin Edinburgh and Stone Cold Dean Austin make up the back 5. Steve Sedgley, Vinnie Samways, Paul Allen and Darren Anderton in midfield, with Gordon Jury and new signing Teddy Sheringham up front. Finally Tottenham might be in the goal. Eric Torsved's on the bench with Terry Fenwick and Andy Gray. This game, a part of Sky's revolution in the new Premier League, and ticket prices are starting as low as £7 today at Portman Road. The first bit of action to report today was in the 29th minute when Jason Cundy went in for a challenge with Jason Dazelle, and has anybody seen a better sliding tackle as Jason Cundy scores from 45 yards, embarrassing Craig Forrest, leaving him to pick the ball out the back of the net. The Tottenham, they don't know what to do. Did they laugh? Cundy thinks he scored the best goal in recorded history, probably is the best goal in Premier League history. 1-0 to Tottenham Hotspur. Unlucky Craig Forrest. He could have jumped though, couldn't he? Look at the composure shown by Cundy. He only had eyes for the ball and knew exactly what he was doing. He tried to take out Jason Dazelle, didn't he, and accidentally scored a worldie. Oh, smouldering look as well for the cameras. He knows what's going on. Good lad, Jason. First goal this season. Ipswich came close to an equaliser not long later when veteran, he's a defender now, isn't he, John Wark, went close with a free kick, but Ian Walker saved. Could have probably held that. And who do you need to pull you back into a game of football? Probably your old warhorse. And John Wark provided that today. After some great play from Jason Dazelle and Geraint Williams, found John Wark running into the box. Neil Ruddock caught for pace, and Wark dinked one over Ian Walker. 1-1. At 35 years of age, the legs may have tired, but the desire was still there, and Walk was on a one-man mission to try and get the 3 points for Ipswich. Unfortunately though, he headed a free header from 5 yards over when you could put your house on him to hit that into the back of the net. Still, 1-1. In the dying minutes, Jason Dazelle will feel like he probably should have won the game for Ipswich after a great cross come in, and he reached for it and just knocked it wide of the far post, leaving, well, Walker was nowhere near it. In the last minute, Ipswich got themselves a dangerous free kick. Neil Thompson whipped the ball in, it was cleared well by a Tottenham defender, nearly found Phil Whelan free at the back post, but again, great defending by Stone Cold Dean Austin. The ball then came clear, it was cleared, and it eventually found itself at the feet of Mick Stockwell on the halfway line, who tried a Jason Cundy, and it landed in Walker's hands safely. Nobody can emulate what Jason Cundy can do on a football pitch. 1-1. Still no win for Tottenham. If you'd have asked any Ipswich fan before the start of the season, obviously back in the top flight after a 6-year absence, they'd have snapped your hand off for an unbeaten run of 5 games with the set of draws against like Man U, Liverpool and now Tottenham. It's a great start to the season for them. Tottenham need to start kicking on really. And that brings us to the end of the 5th episode in our venture back in time. Blackburn sitting pretty at the top. They're expected to be there, aren't there? Some still great teams pushing. Everton could have had a chance to go top today. They failed with a 0-0 draw against bottom of the league Wimbledon. Man United pushing up the table. Wimbledon still bottom of the league, still winless, as are Tottenham. Nottingham Forest losing players left, right and centre. Sheffield United no wins since the start of the season. Liverpool still down there as well. Hopefully going to try and kick on in the coming weeks. David Hirst has taken his rightful place at the top of the goal scoring charts. Brian Dean and Eric Cantona no goals this week. David White gets himself 1. Shearer still on 4 goals. You kind of expect that's going to get a few more though, don't you? Well, thanks very much for joining us and we'll see you next week as we relive the league.